This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Dr. Connie for the first time. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to talk to people. We love to talk to new folks on the program all the time. And before we get to the heart of your story, we always ask every guest a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Great questions. I always love those questions because they kind of get us anchored into where we are and what we're doing. So, really, my background has been in helping people overcome barriers in their life, and I've been doing that for about 35 years. And about 16 years ago, I stumbled onto something in one of my careers that I think has the potential to really, and it has changed people's lives. It changes their trajectory. So that's really what I'm all about, is helping figure out what's going on in people's lives and helping them get past that so that they can really live the best life that they can possibly live. And in the nutshell, that's it. And I look forward to sharing that with you today.
So we're going to focus on like when ADHD isn't the whole story. And
Mhm.
you have a book called "Solving the ADHD Riddle," which you have
Mhm.
up. People can check that out. But when we focus on that, what's the most understood concept about ADHD that I think most people maybe have a misconception about?
That there's no hope and they can't do anything about it and they're stuck with it for life. And I've dubbed myself the ADHD mythbuster because I just know that to not be true. So ADHD actually has a lot going on underneath it, as to a lot of other conditions. So as I said, I've been in the field for 35 years. And the last 16 have been dedicated to this process, which is what generated the book, Solving the ADHD Riddle. And what I'm really here to do is to help people understand there's something else that's actually going on, that when we figure that out, there's something we can do about it, and then people's lives change.
Because it seems I'm a child of the '70s, and I think I remember like going to school, and they used to have like a room where they'd send kids that were like couldn't get themselves like into the classroom box.
Right.
So they would pull them and just put them in this other room.
Hmm.
There was I never heard of any kind of medications at that time. They just thought it was a behavioral issue. And
Right.
and and a lot of times, kids would get detention, they would get treated because they thought they were just, willful disobedience.
That's right. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And that's a lot of what one chapter is all about in my book, is that this is not willful bad behavior. If I can't remember, I'm a child and I can't remember what parents or teachers are telling me, and they're saying something to me over and over again, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. I start thinking I'm either not smart, I can't figure it out, or I start getting really frustrated because people are starting to raise their voice to me. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing, and no one can seem to tell me what that is. And therein lies two things that are going to happen. In little boys, they're going to start acting out typically because that frustration and that anger starts rising up, and you're going to see behaviors. In girls, what happens is they tend to withdraw. So they get quiet, they'll sit in the back of the classroom, and they get passed along. Little boys end up channeled over into all these other programs to support them, and no one is getting to the root cause of what's really going on. And so you've got the behaviors. The behaviors are really something that needs to be decoded. So if we can understand what these behaviors are trying to tell us, what is this child trying to tell us with these behaviors? We pull that back instead of going after trying to wipe out the behaviors through either behavior modifications or drugs, and actually start looking at what's happening here, then we can get a lot more information, and we're going to be much better able to understand this child and figure out what to do to support this child so that everyone wins instead of everyone losing, which is a lot of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I took sociology in college as my major, and what I've always been interested in is, people always want to go for the quick fix,
Oh, yeah.
and there's like this paper over the problem. I
Yep.
also took like philosophy, and there's different ideas of like if people don't get to that looking glass self or actually have some critical thinking about
Mhm.
like why is this happening, and not
Right.
have all these assumptions, And you
Yeah.
have some societies that have certain social mores and concepts, and well, everybody's affected by anomie, or it's like this or like that. But people want the quick solution.
Hmm.
So it's like, oh, we'll put them in the box or
That's
get
right.
them medication. But did you ever think to maybe try to find the root cause analysis? I'm in programming. I do a lot of
Mhm.
coding. I'm in software design.
Ah.
We have to come up with like a business case, a use case, like what is the problem before
Mhm.
we come up with the solution. Or some people actually give you the solution before they understand the problem.
Well, and quite frankly, that is almost exactly what happens, not because people aren't meaning well, because they don't know what they're dealing with and they don't know how to solve it. And so if you're just kind of spinning around out here, you have this problem in front of you, and you have just the traditional belief structure. Well, that traditional belief structure about ADHD doesn't get us very far down the line, which is why we're in the mess that we are in. Because
Mhm.
if it had been working, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in. So the things that we've tried haven't worked very well for a large portion of this population. And I work with children and adults. So this isn't just geared toward children. But
Yeah.
the book was written because I wanted to get the attention of teachers and parents. Because if we can tackle this early on, we're going to keep these kids out of juvenile detention hall, quite frankly, and off the streets. And that's how big this is. This is how big the problem is. Because when children can't read, if they're not reading on here's a, I'm not going to quote a lot of stats today, but this is one I want
Yeah.
people to hang on to, which is if children are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade, you're learning how to read up until that age. When you hit fourth grade, you're now using reading to learn. If you can't read properly, guess what's going to happen to you? The trajectory is pretty clear. You're not going to do well in school. And so, if we can get this problem solved before we get to those points with today's children, then we can really change the trajectory of where we're going, not only in this country, but literally globally. Because this isn't just a problem here, it's a problem around the world with children who are struggling. And so, really, I want to kind of dive into what I'm talking about are auditory and visual processing problems, something no one is really talking about.
Because I guess a lot of people don't want to put energy into understanding people, like if you have like a bell curve of people who are
Mhm.
in the middle of the bell curve, they say, well, I'm only going to handle the people that can stay in the box.
Right.
And they being a creative, I always have found that there's a lot of creatives. I've been around a lot of artists, like we're neurodivergent, a lot of
Yeah.
cases. And
Right.
we found a way out because we found a way to use art, whatever the
Hmm.
art is, to
Right.
express ourselves, and that became a path to
Right.
get some kind of success. If
Right.
people don't know how to take their neurodivergence or not fitting in the box,
Hmm.
and the society isn't prone to like, why are we only going to handle, you know, the people that are easy to handle? Then it's like, okay, well then you don't want to put any resources in the people who are difficult. But at the back end, you deal with it within the prison system, within people not being able to, get homeless situations. You have like all these societal impacts, as a sociology major, like it cascades, and
Hmm.
it's like it's citywide, nationwide, worldwide.
It's worldwide. It's absolutely that. Because if we can't figure out what really is going on, we'll never get the right approach to solving the problem. And so you have to understand what this is. Like you were saying, people haven't really, really haven't figured it out. We just kind of make it a major assumption. Oh, it's ADHD, so that means this. And I've seen so many things even recently that, well, ADHD, you're going to have it for life. You're never going to get over it. And it's like that is such a myth. It is so not true. And when you're talking about the bell curve, I kind of saw this vision. It's like, well, that bell curve, that thing's getting smaller and smaller and smaller for where people fit in. Pretty soon, that box isn't even going to be enterable, that's a word, by
Yeah.
anyone because everyone is needing to find their pathway. And if we're not honoring that, we're really not honoring the person. So does getting rid of the ADHD get rid of the creativity? No, it just makes it easier to be creative. So if we kind of get rid of the struggle, and I'll say there's nothing wrong with us struggling in life when we're moving forward, we're learning, we're seeking to
Mhm.
grow, we're all of that. But it is this undermining current that is almost like a riptide for people that just pulls them out and they can't find their voice, they can't find their pathway. That's a problem because then people are not able to actually bring to light what they're here to do. They get defeated early on, they get defeated in school. And how many people are not working to the level that they're capable of? And so many of these children get tagged as needing to be in special services that may actually not need to be there. And that's one of the big things that I think as a society we really need to start grappling with a little bit better. Because just because someone can't pay attention doesn't mean they need to be in a special class. It means we need to understand why they can't pay attention and meet them where they are. And
Mhm.
with the services I do, we actually improve how people's brain, it's like a gym for your brain, is what we're doing. So you're able to train that up so you can do better. And then it tends to hold. So I often tell people, this whole process is kind of like when you learn how to ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
You can't, the only way you can learn how to do it is to get on and do it. But then
Yeah,
when
you
you have
fall
it,
you
you
fall
have
down
it.
a couple of times, when you're a kid, you're willing to, learn how to skateboard or
Right,
roller skates or a bicycle because 'cause you're not worried about, like, "I know I'm gonna fall down," right?
right,
Right. You get older, you get it's harder to do those things because
right.
then you get embarrassed in front of people, you don't wanna do it. So you kinda gotta
Hmm.
get that childlike ability to kinda
Hmm.
try that thing and
Yeah.
not be scared that you're gonna maybe not get it the first time or the second time or third time, fourth time. You're like, it's gonna take a little bit of work, to do it.
Hmm. Well, it does. And imagine, though, if I'm already defeated by the time I'm 8 years old because I haven't been able to do anything that people are asking me to, how much am I going to feel confident about myself in being able to solve problems in the world when I now think I'm not very smart? I mean, I'm going to wear that badge for a long time in my life if I really think I can't do a lot of things and people have told me that I have some problem or I'm not listening or let's go down the list of the behaviors that children are told. And in a lot of cases, I've worked with schools out here and I have had hundreds of parents come through my office with really incredible stories about things that are happening in the classroom that just shouldn't be. And I'm going to be honest here. I come from teaching, so I've taught for
Yeah.
25
So,
years. I
you
taught in
know what
academia. My
yeah,
mother taught for 32 years in a second grade classroom. My aunt was a dean of an education. So I get teaching and I understand what teachers are up against right now. So it's a systemic problem. And what happens with the systemic problem is that we don't really have enough good analysis that's going on with these kids to understand what's going on and then to be able to support both the child and the teacher in the classroom and the parents. Because right now, when these interventions fail, everyone's blaming everyone else. The child gets blamed, the teacher gets blamed, the parents get blamed, the school gets blamed. No one wins in that scenario. Lawsuits ensue because children aren't learning. Parents feel that schools aren't meeting the need and they aren't, and sometimes they can't because they don't know what's going on. So
Mhm.
imagine for a moment if we could solve all of that.
Well, it just seems like, traditional structures are kinda you get people say, "Well, it's just reading, writing, arithmetic," and they don't wanna get into any kind of softer skills.
Right.
They want everybody to be in a box, and
Yeah,
if you're not in the box, they put your warehouse to somewhere else.
that's right.
And it's like the problem is, we're living in an AI automation robotics era. And the
Yeah.
more people that fall off the tracks, they get, derailed,
Hmm.
the worse outcomes are gonna be because, like, the safety nets are being reduced, the
Right.
programs are being reduced. It's all going to bottom line, what's the most profitable thing? What's the most efficient thing?
Hmm.
And they're taking away, like different pathways that people could go down. And so
Right.
we've gotta start prioritizing people,
Right.
you know? And some people have kind of fallen victim to this idea that efficiency and profitability is nice on a spreadsheet, but you can't see the value of those numbers
That's right.
on the spreadsheet. All you see is the profitability. That's not the whole story.
Well, it isn't. And I was at lunch a while back with a business consultant, a couple of them, kind of not my bailiwick because I'm over in this other realm, but I was listening to them talk about decisions that a particular company was making. And one of the comments was, are these business decisions being made by the accounting branch or the management branch? Because if it's in the accounting world and that's all that's being focused on, this is not going to last. It can't, because
Yeah.
you cannot put that money to be the first and foremost God in this business when you don't account for people and what people bring to your business. So straight up, there it is.
It
You can
makes
keep going down this pathway, but it isn't going to last for long. It won't
no.
last.
No, I mean, I have a significant problem with them. I'm in the tech, and the AI is being used to replace human
Mhm.
beings at an amazing rate. It's like the industrial revolution on
Yeah,
exponentially
yeah,
worse,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so, like, if we already have people falling off the path
Mhm.
without the AI,
Right.
you factor in the AI that will get rid of not only blue collar jobs, but white collar
Mhm.
jobs. And
Mhm.
the idea there's gonna be this universal income. So, okay, well, if there was gonna be universal income 30 years ago when the internet was created, how come they didn't pay us for the information they use?
Yeah.
You're not really showing me that you would actually do that because you could have been doing that for the last 20, 30 years and you haven't done it. So that's kind of pie in the sky. So let's like really get back to humanity and say
Mhm.
human beings are valuable.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like you can't just because you can't get that measure right now of what this person is going to make money for you.
Mhm.
That should not be the only thing you're looking at. And I think we're living in a world where like the accountants are kind of running the show.
They are running the show right now, and it isn't sustainable. So, kind of the good news about this is at some point that's going to crash like any bad idea crashes. I always think about the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, here we go. So, it doesn't, it doesn't have to end badly, but we do have to be aware. And I think people are becoming more and more. I'm probably an optimist in the grander sense of the world because I work around people with ADHD and we're kind of solving that whole thing. And nobody ever came along and said, "Hey, you can do this."
Yeah.
So, there's hope, and I turn on hope. That's what we bring to people, is getting things resolved. And I think the more people that we reduce the distractibility within them, the greater our collective world will be, with people really being on track for what they can deliver in the world. Right now, if there's this massive distractibility within a person, it's really hard for them to focus. It's hard for people to learn. It's hard for them to feel successful. And they really have to struggle to find it. And again, there's nothing wrong with us stretching ourselves and reaching and growing and learning and such. But it's when it's a defeating kind of struggle that people just give up because they think there isn't any hope. That's what I'm here to resolve. I'm not interested in just standing by and letting that happen for people. I think we've got processes now that we've honed ourselves for a good 16 years, and I know this works. And so we just see the successes day in and day out. Our youngest has been 3, and our oldest has been 93. And I work with people at every decade. I have not worked with someone who's 100 yet, so I'm putting the call out. If you know someone wants to tune up their brain a little bit, give me a call.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me because I've talked to a lot of people who've been in a multiple disciplines, but the idea is people can kind of remap their brain, right? You can reprogram. Like I'm into software design, and we create the code, right? Where
The
there's a
same
source
thing.
code, there's like
Yeah.
your legacy code, there's like
Yeah.
a structural change, and then a non-structural change. Like in our world
Mhm.
of programming, structural change is like you add these tables, you add a whole new table, or you take columns or away from a table or add to a table. That
Mhm.
means you've got to learn new things. right? You're not just changing the values in the column. You're
Mm.
actually building a whole new concept of that new data
Yeah.
type, that new data thing. And people can learn because, as a musician or an athlete,
Hmm.
repetition or rehearsal or practice. People can understand that when it comes to a musician or an
Hmm.
athlete,
Right.
but you can do that every day. You can learn to kind of
Mhm.
get a handle on what's going on with a person like you. But yourself is like
Yeah.
you can teach people like ways to manage and reframe the picture, right?
Mhm. We absolutely do. And so in our world, that term is called neuroplasticity. And so that actually has been around for a good 100 years, the term, but really starting to implement it and fully understanding what this is. It's anything we have ever learned. We use this part of our brain to make it happen. Like you're talking about being a musician, you have to practice. You practice until it just becomes a natural flow in your body. And what you've done is train your brain. There was a great study out of Harvard several years ago about piano playing. I don't know if you'd ever heard about this study. So they took two sets of students and they wanted to learn about kind of how the brain learns. And so they decided to take people who wanted to learn how to play the piano. And so they had one group of students who actually sat at the piano and played. They had another group of students who only imagined themselves sitting at the piano playing. Guess which group was the better group at the end of this?
I wonder. I mean, being
They
a
were both
musician, both
the
success,
same.
the same.
They were
Wow.
both the same because they had set up the piano to start with so they could get the keys, and get the tune or whatever. And then the virtual mind group, so meaning the group that just sat and imagined themselves learning how to play that, was no different from the group that sat at the piano and actually manually moved the keys. They had the same results. And we think about sports players. I mean, how many sports players talk about imagining playing the game?
Hmm.
And so they'll go through the game. Basketball players will talk about that.
In their
Sports
head.
people talk about it. People who, are in high competitions and Olympics, they talk about envisioning how their performance is going to go. So what they're doing is this rehearsal. They're doing it within their mind, and the mind cannot tell the difference. When we're doing that and we're envisioning that, the mind can't tell the difference between a real event and what we are conjuring up in our mind, which opens a whole can of worms if you really want to go down that rabbit hole for a minute. But the bottom line is we have so much power in our brain that we have not started even close to tapping, that we can literally change our lives. And
Well,
what
that's
we
really
do is,
important for like
yeah.
resources. Like if you have people that don't have access to a piano or
Right.
they don't have access to a practice area, if the same result is from actually going through it in your brain without actually having the
Hmm.
Steinway or having the
Yeah.
field, that means you could have a lot of good results without a lot of cost.
Hmm. You because we can capitalize on that neuroplasticity. So that's really the key of all of this work that we're doing, is when we're looking at children who are struggling and we're looking at adults who are struggling. So I work with adults who are in work settings. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I had a veteran I was working with, and she was telling me about this huge struggle she had at work and how things just were really bad for her. She was on a performance improvement plan, the second one, and she couldn't really even put into words what wasn't working for her. So I had her do the assessment that we run, and she was in a high call volume position. And when I assessed her, it turns out she didn't have really any effective auditory processing skills.
Mm.
So her brain was just getting completely overrun and she was overwhelmed constantly and could not keep up with that. And so if I had found her, if she'd found me 6 months earlier, we probably could have done something, even though I tried to work with the HR company. They were so far down the road that we couldn't save the job. But I think in the future, and that's really what spurred me along with some of the work I've been doing in the last couple of years, which is getting this out to employees, because you don't have to go through that. If you're a mismatch, we can figure out what isn't working. We can figure out, my background of rehabilitation counseling is really helping remove barriers for people to either get or keep a job. And then fast forward that now, I've expanded that out across a lot of platforms here. The same thing though, helping people, do well in their lives. And if we can figure out what this bottom line is and deal with it, then we open the door for a lot of possibilities for people. And I think we're going to need every brain on deck as we go forward from the next 10 to 20 years of being able to really solve some of the challenges that we are now facing in society.
It seems like these assessments should be made to kind of figure out where people match where they are. Like
Mhm.
where you are right now, this is where you match. Now you might want to go be somewhere else. Like you might want to
Right,
ramp up that you want to go into management, but you really don't have the skill set for
right.
management. And you could do an
And
assessment, independent assessment of rather, not just from a business
Mhm.
point of view, but from your kind of assessment is like, does this career that they want to go in actually match what they're able to do?
And that's exactly what I do now. So we can get that information in an hour, and it's computer based. So all we need to do is get connected through Zoom, and we can get that, answer those details for you in less than an hour. And then I really craft up kind of a whole plan for people to be able to mitigate this. It's like, imagine, you've got one set of data, you got another set of data, and they're sitting like this. But what if we could get them to line up for you? What if we could get that to fit you, to fit, or it to fit you? Because there are ways to help that. And then in some cases, like the veteran, if we did the neurofeedback with her, we would have been able to strengthen that part of her brain if we'd had enough time before that whole situation was at such a critical point. So I work with veterans, and we're able to really mitigate the trauma. And that's kind of the other sidebar here is people who are dealing with anxiety and trauma, we really kind of help them train their brain so that it works better and not have so much of that reactivity going on as well.
Well, it seems important that, like, at a microcosm level, you can find individuals that you could aid. But at, like, the macrocosm level, like, within organizations, if
Hmm.
people would do take these assessments across the board
Right.
in a company or an
Yeah.
organization and actually see, like, maybe the problems you're having with turnover, maybe the problems you're having with retention are because
Hmm.
you haven't done this baseline
That's right.
assessment, and maybe it's a societal goal should be that maybe we should do these assessments, right? Because you're just looking at somebody's LinkedIn, you're looking at
Yeah.
their resume, you're looking at whatever their references were, but are you actually doing an assessment that would
Hmm.
actually put the right people in the right positions, and then let
Right.
people know where they could ramp to, where if they want to go somewhere, if they want to move in a different direction.
That's exactly right. So imagine if we were doing that in the corporations where people were struggling. Let's just start with the ones who are struggling and figure that out, because they're the ones that are, at the surface, that there's something going on, there's a mismatch of some sort. And literally, this goes back to, 35 years of my career looking at this kind of thing. We can get to it pretty easily. This is not kind of a big deal outside of our organization because this is what we do. But I can say it is a big deal when you don't know what you're up against.
Mhm.
So when we can figure this out and get to those points and answer that for people, we really just get people lined up. And why would we not want to do that? That reduces burnout, it reduces turnover, it reduces so much of this frustration that we can literally help people get on point and use their assets. And then if they really want to go deeper, we can help them, kind of strengthen up those areas, of their brain if they want to kind of get at that root cause if we find that. So you kind of have two different ways you can go, but we can certainly get immediate information to where people can advocate for themselves. It's like, I've just realized I can't process auditory information. I'm really going to be better one-on-one doing something else over here. And then we do kind of either a job carving, a job design program situation with the corporations and HR, or the person says, I think I need a different job, and then
Well,
they go find what they need.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because, like, at a societal level, like a macrocosmal level, if you were more efficient in people matching where
Yep.
they actually fit,
Hmm.
then I think the GDP for if you're if you're an accountant or economist, right? If people are better matched, you have
Hmm.
better retention, less turnover, better satisfaction. There's better satisfaction. People are going to show up. People are going to perform. They're probably going to perform better. So if
Hmm.
people perform better, your efficiencies aren't going to come from like this top down. Go like, oh, I'm going to just tell you to do it. Like the top down, I'm just going to make you do it. Right.
Hmm.
Well, maybe that doesn't work. Maybe you think short term that works, but the numbers show that people are just bouncing from the same corporations keep on pulling the same pool of people.
Yep.
Like the same accountant gets pulled from 10 different companies bouncing around. The same engineer gets pulled, but you're not bringing anybody new in. You're just
Hmm.
taking the same people and moving them around. Well,
Hmm.
how are you going to get better if you're not actually increasing the pool?
Well,
You
exactly. Exactly. I mean, really, from a common sense standpoint, and again, I've come from this long trajectory in education and clinical work that there's value in some of these traditional assessments. We're just in a different world now. We need things that can develop and really deliver the goods in a shorter period of time than what a lot of this takes. So school assessments take an enormous amount of time, and so many times a child can go a whole year before they're actually assessed, so they've lost another academic year. Here in corporations and businesses, you don't even know what you're up against. To try and develop some kind of a improvement plan for an employee, you might as well put a blindfold on, spin yourself around, and swing in a pinata, because what you don't have are good data to be able to make these decisions. The HR companies, the people in that company had no idea this veteran couldn't process auditory information. They were just blaming her for not doing a good job.
yeah. Well, the typical, performance review doesn't
Yeah.
really give people a lot of positive reinforcement. It's more like
Yeah.
red marking something, so it's just
Yeah.
gonna erode your confidence even more,
You
and
did.
most of the traditional systems I've been in the industry for, like, 30 years,
Hmm.
and I've ended up working now for a small startup, more entrepreneurial,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I have a situation in a small startup versus a big corporation. I can
Hmm.
wear many hats, and I can ramp up to whatever's necessary.
Right.
The bigger corporations are kinda, like, tied to more of the box,
They are.
and they look for these, like, skill performance things. They're based on software that's very cookie cutter. They don't really do anything nuanced. They don't actually do what you're talking about, and so
Hmm.
they wonder why they got the turnover, the bad performance, and all this stuff because, well, you guys, you're not really thinking out the box.
There isn't. They're just so, and that's where I think there is some beauty in where we are in our world right now. With granted, there's a lot of disruption that's happening right now. And some of that, is probably quite excessive, we might say. Some of it may give us an opportunity to open some doors and windows that maybe we haven't in the past. Like really this pressure in the school systems with these special education budgets that are just busting through the roof. They can't really manage it anymore because
Mhm.
any child that's not within that bell curve is out here somewhere, and those are the special what just distinguished as special needs. What if a lot of that isn't though? What if that's just if you knew this child couldn't keep up auditorially because there's an auditory speed problem, that does not mean this child is slow cognitively. It
Yeah,
just
you got
simply
the
means there's a
wrong diagnosis,
processing
misdiagnosed.
challenge. I would go to Vegas. And I'm not a betting person, but I would go to Vegas on this that there are millions of children in this country who have been moved over into special education services. That all that's really going on is they have auditory and visual processing problems. We can find that in an hour. And in about 20 hours of brain training, we can get that resolved. Wouldn't that
Well,
be a lot cheaper?
yeah, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're spending so much money and you're warehousing people, you're being very inefficient. You're
That's right.
not actually, people aren't able to self-actualize. People
You
are
can't.
and incentivized to not
Yeah,
be part of the system. So they fall out of the system and they fall through the cracks and they end up in, in the places you don't want them to be.
that's right.
And that's not moving society forward. So then you're getting a lot of people are not able to live the life they actually could be living.
You're not. In my book, I talk about a teenager. When I this was kind of really at the front end of this work as I was uncovering all of this. I knew the dad, so the dad called me one day and he said, "We need to come see you." It's like, "Well, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, my son just got kicked out of high school." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And he said, "Well, my son had been in special education and has been in special education. And the other day he was sitting in the library and he got bored and he decided to hack the school's computer system to change a grade."
Oh no.
That was the first time they realized this young boy was brilliant.
But
By
that
that time,
you could use that. I mean, he could actually go to like a computer camp. You could send him. There's
yes.
a whole pathway he could go.
Right. So he brought him in and we assessed him, and sure enough, he had some auditory and visual processing challenges. So what had been happening is in the classroom, he couldn't attend to what was being said and he would be acting out. So that became a behavioral problem. And then, he started internalizing all this negative information about himself and, the peer pressure and just all the conflict. And he was an angry teenager, but now he was getting in fights all the time. And it was absolutely, you could trail it. You could literally look at what had happened to this boy at that time. He's a grown man now. But you could look at this and you could see the trajectory of the frustration, the negative self talk, maybe some taunting in the classroom that was going on, some bullying that was happening to a child who can't learn the way the peers learn. I can tell you 1,000 of these stories that we've worked with children. And when we got him in, and I'll admit the dad probably was kind of dragging him in by the shirt collar that day, but there was quality about him that he wanted to learn about himself and what his struggle was. So he was willing to get in, roll his sleeves up, and do the neurofeedback. And at the end of that, of course, he was in a new school because he was expelled. But there
Mhm.
came a time a little bit later that I was out doing a presentation. His parents were there and he was there. I was having some tech trouble. So I asked him and said, "Can you fix my computer?" And he said, "Of course." So he fixed my computer because he's a genius kid. And then I said, "Do you want to tell your story?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll tell my story." And so he gets up, completely impromptu. This is totally not at all scripted. And he got up, his parents were in the audience, and he said, "Let me tell you what my life was like before neurofeedback." And he started telling the story about how angry he was. And then the clutcher that I'm sure was so hard for his parents to hear. He said, "If I hadn't done neurofeedback," he said, "I would have either killed myself or someone else." He said, "Now, let me tell you what my life is like now." And then he went on to tell this amazing story about how he is succeeding in school. The next year, he scored the highest in that school's history in one of the assessments. And,
Mm.
and he's gone on. Not about, the thing was, but the key was he felt empowered now to be able to do what he was here to do.
Well, I think it's really important for people to understand, societal resources that, are being maybe misapplied or not applied in the correct way. Like if you have something that's not working and then you have a
Mhm.
new process that does work, and then some people just, they don't want to buy into it.
Yeah.
So I guess like what's the struggle from like a societal aspect, the things you're doing or what you're seeing with the ADHD riddle and the solution you have, do you get like cities and counties and governments to understand, politicians to understand like how they should be solving this?
Well, that's where we're going. So I've been doing this for 15, 16 years. And in the beginning, I will say, there was a lot of, what's that? What do you do? I still get some of that. There's less of it now. And now moving into conversations with schools, we're really positioned now to kind of move this on out, to work with corporations, to be able to help people understand that there's a solution to a lot of what we have always believed didn't have a resolution at all, that we were just stuck with this. And that's the message that I carry, is that that's a myth. We don't need to live in that paradigm anymore. Let's move into a new paradigm of where now we understand a whole lot more. We have a very simple computer-based process that we can do within an hour, from wherever people are sitting. And I'll just be really clear, I don't do any diagnosis because I really don't believe in that. I've never believed in it for 35 years. When I was trained really in my master's degree 35 years ago, it was like, you might get people with diagnoses, but that isn't going to tell you anything about that person. That may get them in the door for your services, but then it's your job to figure out what's really going on with this person. What are their strengths and what do you need to strengthen? So this is a very strengths-based approach to capitalize on the things that you're good at. And then can we mitigate some of these areas that you're struggling with, some of what would be perceived as weaknesses, challenges, limitations, whatever you want to call that. It's just something where your brain that part of your brain hasn't been trained to be strong yet. It's like going to the gym. All of my muscles are not necessarily as strong as I would like them to be. So I'm going to go into the gym. Maybe I'm going to work with someone to do an assessment. They're going to give me a training plan. If I follow that training plan, then my muscles are going to get stronger. What I joke about with this is, you got to keep doing that for the rest of your life. With this deal, come in, you get it done, you go live your life. Because once we get the brain strengthened up, the beauty of the brain, like riding a bicycle, is it holds on to it. And then it becomes your new default programming, like in computer programming. You get the programming right, everything's going to run well. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be happier. You're going to have more joy in your life. You're going to have all of these things. You're going to reach your goals. It does. I'm not saying you're not going to have challenges and struggles in your life, but what if you can manage them better because your brain is working more, carefully, or you're not so triggered with trauma? What if we can get rid of some of that by helping your brain capitalize on what it's good at doing, which is repetition and learning? So we capitalize that by dialing in on those areas that need to be solved and resolve that for people.
Well, I think your approach is really interesting because I think some other approaches get people stuck in a lane, and then that lane is like, well, they got to have medication or they got to be in this warehousing process, or they get labeled, and then they're like you said, they don't think they can get out of it. Like what you're giving people a way out, like the light at the end of the hallway is like, I can actually have a sustainable, viable, self-actualized experience with my life, and I'm not stuck. Like, and I'm not stuck with this
You are
bad loop.
not. You're not. You are not stuck. You're not stuck with just these traditional medication or behavioral interventions that for some people work. Obviously I haven't worked for everyone on the planet, but I can tell you the people have come into my clinics, that stuff hasn't worked for them because they wouldn't be in my clinics if it has been. So when we really understand what this underlying root cause is, the good news is we figure it out. There's something that you can do about it to help yourself. It's going to pull you up out of whatever rut you feel like you're in, whatever area you feel like, is your weakness. If we can figure that out and then help you strengthen that, why wouldn't you? I mean, truly, why wouldn't corporations want this? Why wouldn't educational systems want this? When what we create is everyone wins. Everyone wins on this one.
Yeah, because I think sometimes society seems to be structured as they really don't want everyone to win. Like they kind of have a structure where they like if you have like I've always explained, like if in a classroom you've been a teacher, but if a teacher is only getting like 2% of the math class to get it, and they continue that process for 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, that process ain't working. It's not that the kids, like, maybe if you had a math teacher that got 60% of the kids to get it, 70% of the kids to get it, There's something the way about how they're teaching, right? And they can teach every class that comes in that room, they're getting it. So it's like the kids aren't getting dumber. It's like you have to learn how to communicate
Right.
and be able to have that two-way communication to be able to get to that person. So what if you were doing something that would worked in the 50s or worked in the 60s or worked in the 70s? Well, maybe it don't work now.
Well, a lot of it isn't working anymore. And kind of the whole HR piece of job matching, there are some pretty traditional ways that as you mentioned, that we've gone about it. And what if there's a better way? What if there's just a better way to do this? And what if it isn't that big of a deal to accomplish it? So what if we've actually been able to figure some things out here that makes life so much easier for everyone? So that's what I'm talking about with the win-win-win. Everyone wins here. So anyone who comes through this, their lives and the people attached to them get better when each of us has less conflict within us, less frustration, less irritation, and we're living more peacefully and living our best life. What's to lose here with that?
I would assume that it's easier to get a child, on the path than maybe an adult that had more time in the bad loop.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think generally speaking, it runs about the same. I would say some children get done a little quicker with it, maybe, and others don't, depending on what we're working with. If there's anxiety and trauma, that's going to take a little bit to get that dialed down, but we can do it. And I've literally worked with 80 and 90-year-olds. So, the 3-year-old and the 93-year-old, we used to kind of smile because we had to teach both of them how to use the mouse. And then when they both learned how to use the mouse, they could do the program. So that was kind of a fun little thing for us in our clinics. Generally speaking, children are about 6, though, 5 or 6, because they need to be able to sit at the computer, and do this. And then adults, really, the brain is pretty neuroplastic. So, that whole thing that's old dogs can't learn new tricks isn't true at all. So our brains are wired.
I think that's the dogma that stops a lot of people, because there's a lot of people, I run into people as since I'm a musician, it's like, well, I can never play piano.
Oh, yeah. And that's just that mindset. It's a total mindset. Yeah. And to that, I say, well, you're right, because that's what you believe. And so, this whole thing, I used to teach a lot, go around the country and teach a lot about kind of what you believe to be true. It's just your beliefs. And it's hardwired in, though. If I think I can't do something, you're right, you can't until you think you can.
And that's why it's interesting, because like in software design, in the last couple of years, a lot of people are coming in that aren't like comp sci majors, right? We're bringing in people who are like history majors, psych majors, sociology. I got into computer stuff, science, in this industry, and I don't have a comp sci degree. I came from a sociology, political science degree, and I got into analysis. Basically, it was just like I write like research papers. So anybody who goes to a school like a Bowdoin or Bates or something, you know how to write research papers. That's what you learn to do. How to write a thesis. So that's that they found in the industry, they wanted people to actually come up with business cases or use cases. And it was the programmers, they don't necessarily know how to do that. They know how to code.
Right.
They kind of need to be told what the business case is. So they started to realize you needed people, and you also need like artists. And you need other people with other types of skills. So then it became so some people might not even think they could go into the industry because they think it's all, they gotta be like Spock. Like, no, you don't have to be like, you don't have to be Spock.
Well, and if Spock had his place, we wouldn't want a whole spaceship full of Spocks.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you gotta have McCoy, and you gotta have, Kirk.
You're not gonna win that battle. So
yeah, you got other people. You got her and other people in communications. But,
Right.
somebody understands communications, but, yeah, it's just like, there's not only one skill, because that's my problem I get sometimes when people are like STEM. It's all STEM, not necessarily. Like,
Mhm.
you need
Yeah.
to be have a more expansive view of the talent pool, and not
Mhm.
just say, "Oh, we can't use any of these people," because then they think they're
I know.
selling people short.
Well, they are, and now I think they call it STEAM because they realize they need to have the arts in there. It's like, well, that took a minute to get to.
You have to
It's
figure
like,
that out.
we were cutting all these arts programs out of the schools because it wasn't mathematics or, science or something. And it's like, we need the whole world contributing, folks, because we
Yeah.
have a lot of things we need to accomplish here. And we need everyone who's creative and can think outside the box. Obviously, I'm an outside the box person. I wouldn't have
Yeah,
gone down
yeah.
this road. If I was stuck in my rut inside a box, we kind of joke, it's like, what box? We don't know what the box is anymore. So
Well, like
we're
the
outside.
happy accident. I'm a
Yeah,
big, uh, purveyor of the happy accident, like in music,
absolutely.
the idea, and it happens in design, in
Yeah,
engineering. Like, if you look at inventors, a lot of times, like, I was working toward this, and then I had this, happy accident, and it wasn't
right.
what I was trying to do, but it
Hmm.
ends up being better, like aspartame. Like, that wasn't
Yeah,
something they wanted to do, and it's, "Oh,
right.
it's sweet." Oh, that's not what they were trying to do. But
Mm-mm.
that when you think out the box, you allow the out of box thing to
Mhm,
happen or the happy
mhm.
accident to exist and
Right.
not say it's bad. Like, if you
Well,
would
precisely. It's giving people the license to solve problems that, we've created inside a box. Most problems come because we're in a box. And so we're stuck in a box and we can't think beyond what these particular rules or this cube is that we're supposed to be inside of when we actually start realizing the box is the problem.
yeah,
Now, I'm not saying go out and steal and do any
yeah,
of that, so don't take this too far, but from the creative standpoint. So when we've got a problem to solve, like the situation with that veteran, that HR company was stuck so deep inside that box that they weren't even asking the right questions. It's like,
mhm,
well, what are you struggling with here? And listening. All they were doing was trying to check boxes. Well, you're not doing this. You're not doing this.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
supposed to be answering 5 calls here and pushing this data through over here. You're not doing this. Instead of saying, what are you needing? Well, this woman didn't know what she needed. So that's where we come in to kind of figure out, well, what do you need? Well, what's going on? Because some of that, yes, can be solved if we just think broader. But some of it is you're missing data. You don't have information. You don't know what's going on. So that's the way it is with children in school, is if we're only looking to solve a behavioral problem and just dial that down, then you're missing the entire point of what's going on with this child.
Yeah, that's the problem with the spreadsheet. Like, you got
Yeah.
all these numbers, but you're like, "What's the value?"
Well, and that's what's happening in schools because at least my understanding at this point is really what's happening is teachers are being assessed instead of the children. So
Yeah,
are you teaching this to where the kids can pass the test instead of are we teaching critical thinking? Are we teaching people how to live successfully in life? Or are we just teaching, okay, how do I check this box for this question? And then the pressure on the teachers, they can't meet the needs of the children in the classroom very well anymore because the pressure is, oh, well, we've got to get all these scores. Let's stop assessing the wrong thing and let's figure out what these children need. And if we meet that, you're not going to have to worry about your academic scores.
that
That's
kind
going
of
to go away.
that kind of reminds me, like, when I went to Bowdoin, it was like the Socratic method, a lot of blue book.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of blue book exams, oral exams, and so it wasn't like SAT. It's like at the end of a class, you have a blue book, and you had to put it in your own words and
Hmm.
answer the question, and it wasn't multiple choice. You
Right.
had to write it out, you had to speak, and that Socratic method, it creates critical thinking because you
Okay.
have to put it back into your own thoughts, what you
Hmm.
learned, and answer the problem
Hmm.
or theorize at what could the solution be, or give
And
your opinion.
and it gets into your neuronal processes then because you're actually absorbing it, working with it, and wiring yourself to remember it. Whereas what's happening right now in so many cases is they're just memorizing data so they can pass a test and then they drop
Yeah,
it and they forget it after the
yeah,
test is passed.
yeah, there's no retention, so you get these kids that have these supposed high scores, and they come into companies, and they don't have critical thinking and they can't think out the
Mhm.
box. They can't. So like if you give them a problem, like they find one way to solve it. And like in our industry, it's like, I
Mhm.
want you to come give me like 4 or 5 options,
Mhm.
and you can
Mhm.
only give me like one,
That's
right?
right.
And they're
If
like,
they
that
can't,
doesn't help us.
that's right. Well, and I read something a few weeks or months ago where, and I wouldn't say it if I did remember, one of the Ivy League schools, some of the professors were talking about the incoming freshmen for this, last academic year, and they can't sit down and read a book that they need to read. So this is
Oh
Ivy
yeah,
League.
yeah,
And
because
so,
we had to read so much, like so
yeah,
many pages a week. And
yeah,
when I would talk to authors today, right? I remember, reading 200,000, 300,000 word books. I'm a child of the
yeah,
70s. Um, they saying people today can't read 60, 70,000 word books. They can't even retain it.
you
And
can't,
like, how are you going to learn anything if
you're
you
not.
can't retain what the previous generations could retain?
That's right. Because we've trained our brains on 140 characters.
Yeah, that's not going to work. And so the problem is everybody wants the cliff notes. Everybody wants the cheat
Right.
sheet. No one, even in music, right? People could listen to a 4-minute song, 5-minute song, 7-minute song, whatever. Now
Mhm.
people are like minute 35 seconds, minute 52 seconds. Like, to me as a
Mhm.
musician, I can't even get my composition started in that length of time.
Not
Like,
in that length of time,
I,
heavens knows. So really what we've done structurally within our world is diminish our short-term capacity. That's one of the things that we assess is what is your, working memory capacity. And a lot of people cannot hit the mark at all on that. And we actually train that so we can help people improve that and strengthen that. People's memory is just shot. A lot of it is the distractibility of today's society. And quite
Mhm.
frankly, you know, being too distracted with things and not being able to hone in on
Focus.
really where they need to be. And we actually work with people to improve that too, to where that distracted, but we train the brain how you can corral your brain more efficiently and use this amazing tool that we've got stuck on our shoulders here that we are not taking full advantage of. And that's our goal, is to really help people take full advantage of their faculties. Because if you're scattered all the time, it's going to be really hard for you to do the things that you're here to do. And I fully believe people have a reason for being here. And we just need to help them get to a life where they can live that.
Yeah, we have to tell people, like, like if you're coding or if you're a musician, like, turn the cell phone off, turn the
Yeah.
alerts off, like, because if you're like even if like singing a song, a lot of times artists today will use their cell phone for their lyrics in front of the
Mm,
mic. And
mm,
we have found that it's very distracting and the vocal performance is like bad.
yeah.
When they're reading off the phone in front of the mic, they don't work on what they should be working on, like their expressiveness, how they should do it. So we tell them, like, you got to memorize the lyric and
Mm-hmm.
then work on singing it and put the phone down and just sing it. Is it, but that means you got to retain it.
Right. And
And
that's the
people wanna
problem.
go on, yeah, they can't do, they don't wanna do it. They was like, "Well, you gotta do it."
Well, back in whenever it was, we used to carry all the phone numbers around in our heads.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't have
We
to,
don't.
like, default to the phone. It's like you gotta start learning
Mhm.
how to let that, like, it's like a little, I don't know, it's too much of a cheat sheet. Like, you really
Well,
gotta
it
learn.
is. Yeah, because we've lost the ability to really have capacity to remember information. And, imagine if you didn't have that limitation anymore. If we could actually help you get stronger in that, you're going to be, just stronger. There was a study that was done on kids in a school getting ready to take an assessment. So they had three groups. They had one group that had their cell phone with them on their desks. They had one group that taking the test that had just a cell phone off their desk, but on their person or nearby. And then there was a group that didn't have the cell phone even in the room. And so, which group did better? The one who didn't have anything in the room. It was
Mhm.
very clear that just even having the phone near you was a distraction when it came to being able to concentrate on your assessment.
Yeah, probably thinking about like, oh, maybe if I found what was on the phone,
Might have
it's gonna
missed
be
something.
better
Fear,
than what yeah, that's in my head.
the whole
Not
FO, fear of missing out. You're missing out on a test. Oh, is someone texting me? Oh, is there a social media thing going on? Is something happening here that I'm not aware of? And when it's not even in the room, you can just literally focus on what you need
focus,
to be doing.
actually get it done. But that's
Yeah.
super important. I think it's amazing. We always end up talking, getting to the hour point before we ever realize it, but we hit the hour. But
All right.
I think it's been a really great conversation, and you brought up a lot of good points. Yeah, and we want people to, check out your book of solving the ADHD riddle. And we do have your website, ConnieMcReynolds.com. And we encourage people to click on that. If people click on your website, what do they find there?
Oh, they'll get information about everything that we're doing. So if you want to schedule a free 20-minute consultation, you just go on there. You'll get on my calendar for that. And if you have questions about anything, let me know. We do a lot of remote services, so you don't have to be in Southern California with us, which is what is nice. And again, I don't diagnose, but we can get to the root cause of what's going on with you, a loved one, your child. Our work is really about helping people live their best life. So there's many different ways that we can help you do that. And I have different kinds of, information that you can glean from this if we do the assessment with you. So you just need to give me a call, send me an email. That's all up on the website. And I'm really, really happy and interested in helping people kind of change their life.
Well, I'm glad that you're paying it forward in that way. I would do appreciate the time you took to be on the show today. And
Yeah.
again, we'd like people to check that URL out. It's fully clickable on any of the channels we've been on. We've been on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick Live. And we'll be on all the other podcast channels that you can listen to or watch a podcast by the end of the day tomorrow. I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you.